Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Emily, and on this channel I share all things motherhood, clean living, homeschool, and faith. So if any of that interests you, be sure to hit that subscribe button below and click that little bell icon on the side so you get notifications whenever I post new videos. You can also check me out on Instagram at A Woman on a Journey blog, and you can check out my blog at awomanonajourney.com. So today's video is a collaboration that is being hosted by Christy over at Gracefield, and a couple of us mamas have gotten together and we are sharing, because this month, October, and specifically this week, is pregnancy loss awareness. And so we are sharing our experiences in our pregnancy loss in hopes of relating and encouraging you if this is the season of life that you are in or that you are trying to overcome. So when it comes to my pregnancy loss story, there's probably only a handful of people that know the full story. I have shared in the past with others that we did lose our first child in our first pregnancy, and but there's not a lot of people that know all the details. And so today I'm actually going to be sharing with you those details and sharing what that experience was and my growth from that. So back in 2014, September specifically, my husband and I found out that we were expecting our first child. And we had all the feelings going, the nervousness, the excitement, the little bit of fear, all those emotions, especially since for us, we actually did not plan that child. And so it came as a complete shock to us. And I had just started a job 2 weeks prior. And so being 2 weeks into this job, I'm still on my 90-day probation period. And I did freak out a little bit when it came to that, but overall we were really excited. And I actually found out pretty further out than what I think I should have known. But I found out within I was 6 weeks at that point when I had found out, or going into being 6 weeks along. And so it was literally within a day or two, maybe even 3, that I started to get the pregnancy symptoms. And there was some nausea, there was a little bit of cramping, there was definitely tiredness. So all the things that tend to be normal during as far as early pregnancy symptoms are concerned. And so there wasn't really much of a concern there. But after that went on for a whole week, I was speaking with my mother. I was telling her what I was feeling. At first, when I told her of the symptoms, she told me it was completely normal. But after it was starting to get worse after a week, she told me, you need to go to the emergency room. That doesn't sound right. And you shouldn't be going through it so bad where you're laying down. And it literally felt like I was menstruating and I wasn't. And so I was concerned. So one day after work, I just called my husband and I said, I'm gonna go to the emergency room. Can you meet up with me? So right after work, we met up and we went straight to the emergency room. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. I explained to them what I was going through. They put me through all the blood work. They had, it took a couple of hours before I got those results. Then they put me through a sonogram. And it was just such an uncomfortable experience being in the emergency room and just constantly waiting for updates, constantly waiting to be seen by the next person or having the next test done or anything like that. And so it was frustrating. I was worried something was wrong with the baby. And I didn't know what to expect. It was my first pregnancy, and it was so weird because it's like, literally within 1 week of getting used to the idea, now I'm fearing what's happening. So I ended up getting the sonogram, and then about I want to say maybe an hour and a half later, finally we are in a room and we're waiting for the doctor, and the doctor comes in, and all she could say was there was only a gestational sac that they could find. There was no heartbeat, there was no yolk sac. So what it looked like is that I had to ask because she didn't come out and say anything other than, you know, the pregnancy is not viable. And so it was like, okay, but what happened? What do you mean? And so she went on to explain that at some point during fertilization or implantation, actually, it looks like the baby died in that process of the implantation. And so she said that, you know, you're gonna need to go to Planned Parenthood and get a D&C because your body obviously hasn't recognized that the pregnancy that you've miscarried. And so I immediately started crying. I was hysterical. My husband, he was teary-eyed. He was trying to stay strong, and all she could do was look at us and just say, "You guys are young." That's all she said to us. No, I'm sorry. No, no anything. And this is sometimes really hard to talk about because during that time, I didn't really know or understand why that would happen to me. And at 3 in the morning, my husband and I are going home filled with grief. And I'm sorry. I did not expect to get emotional like this. But we were filled with grief, confusion, and the next day my aunt called me, and she has gone through several miscarriages, and she told me, go get a second opinion and make sure you don't have a blighted ovum. Make sure that it's not a delayed pregnancy, and just go make sure. So that's what I did, because my HCG levels were high. The yolk sac was growing. You know, so there were things that was just like, my body is still trying to grow a baby that is obviously not growing or alive right now. So I went for 2 weeks. There was a doctor that was very sympathetic, and so she had me go for 2 weeks every 3 days to see her, and she was testing my HCG levels. They were doing sonograms and just making sure that there isn't anything that they missed. They did notice that the HCG levels and the yolk sac kept growing, but nothing else. So after that 2 weeks, I went ahead and I scheduled the D&C with their office. And so I went ahead, I got the D&C. They took a sonogram before just to make sure. So at that point, I was 9 weeks along. And I was just like, all right, I have to do this. So at that point, when I came out of the procedure, I literally felt more grief than I did when I first heard about it. And I don't know, it's the fact of knowing that now officially that child is gone. And I knew that child was with the Lord. I did. But I was angry. I was angry, I was frustrated because I didn't understand why. And at that time, I was serving the Lord. I was in a little bit of a struggle with my relationship with the Lord, but I had not walked away. I was still seeking. But man, was I bitter. I was very bitter because it didn't make sense to me. And I kept thinking about, what did I do wrong? Why did this have to happen to me? I wasn't even planning this. I didn't plan to have a child yet. My husband and I actually had spoken about waiting 1 more year. We were actually married 2.5 years when we got pregnant for the first time. And we had actually spoken about, after I had started this new job, that we would wait about 6 months to a year, most likely a year, before we would plan to have our first child. So for me, it was just kind of like, what was all this for? And I didn't understand. One of the things that I was told was, well, to look at it as, at least I found out early on, and it wasn't later into the pregnancy, as some people have to go through. I was also told that, you know, at least it wasn't, you know, something more dramatic that happened. So while I know those words had no negative intentions, for me at that moment, that's not what I wanted to hear. That's not what I needed to hear. And those are just not the things to say. And like I said, it was not ill-intentioned at all, but I was in a bad state of mind. And I just kept asking God, why? Why? I didn't ask for this. And so after about a week after my DNC, I ended up in the doctor's office for a follow-up. And I told them I still didn't feel right. I didn't feel healed. I felt like something was still bothering me inside. And they did another sonogram and they saw that I still had some tissue and blood clots left over from the procedure. So I went into that appointment very early in the morning so that I would make it to work on time. At this point, I've only been at my job for about 5 weeks, I think. And I had to call out that day again. And I had to go in for the procedure to get another DNC and go through the whole healing process again, antibiotics, the whole 9. And then I went in for another follow-up visit a week later. And basically what they did was, during the DNC, they did a chromosome test to see if there was anything wrong with the chromosome, any kind of defect or anything like that, to better understand what could have caused the miscarriage. So I went into the doctor's office. He asked me how I was feeling, and you know, I went through the whole thing. And then he said, well, we looked over everything, and the results came back as a healthy male. And I looked at him and I said, a healthy male? I said, you were able to know what I was gonna have? And he said, yeah. And I said, so what happened? Why did this happen? And he said, it's just one of those things that happen. And you'll be okay. And that was really hard for us as a couple to swallow, because we had actually, first and foremost, we would have wanted a healthy child no matter what. But our desire was to have a boy first. And it was just a desire in our hearts, if we had to choose. And so to hear that and to actually know what we were probably gonna have hurt. It hurt a lot. I couldn't deal with it very well. But I also didn't have time to deal with it. I had to move on. I had work. I had a new job. I had, responsibilities. And at that time, I didn't really process it. It was just kind of like boom, boom, boom. Go to these doctor's appointments, get the DNC, go back for another DNC, go back for follow-up appointments, and then make sure you don't get fired from your job. Make sure you're doing a great job and that they understand that this was something that just happened in the process. And I did have to eventually tell my boss what was happening, because it was just, I didn't know how she was gonna take it. I didn't know what was gonna happen. Like, I just didn't know what to expect. That was my concern. I was more concerned about that than the emotions that I was actually going through. And my heart was just hard, and I just kept moving forward. And so I actually lost that pregnancy around the same time of the month. October 10th was my DNC. And so right now it's October 13th. Fast forward, a month goes by after my second DNC, and I had a friend that came over, and she's just the sweetest friend. She lives in Tennessee now, but she came over and she asked me, how was I feeling, emotionally and physically and mentally after my miscarriage. And I told her, I said, I can't help but wonder why this happened to me. Like, I told her, I was like, I'm a little better, but Thanksgiving had passed by, the holidays were coming up, and there's just that mindset of like, I would actually be pregnant right now, but I'm not. And I told her that I'm just not understanding. Like, I just don't understand why this would happen. If this wasn't meant to be, then why did God even allow it to happen? I never actually planned this pregnancy. I didn't ask for this. So if it wasn't meant to be, then why did he allow it? And she listened to me, she sympathized with me, and one of the things that she said to me that has stayed in my head all these years: you never know if God will use this to relate to someone who has gone through the same thing. And when she said those words to me, it was like my heart completely softened. And I didn't know what to say to her when she said that. I was just, as I processed it, I was just like, you're right. And after we hung out and we spoke and she had left, those words just kept piercing my heart over and over again for days. And I was just like, all right, God, I accept the fact that that little boy is in your arms for whatever reason you saw fit. I accept that. And I'm ready to move on. Does it mean that it wasn't hard for me to move on from then on? No. It was hard. But it got a little easier because I released that to him. I was holding on to it so much because I was angry for what I had gone through. I was upset that after getting a DNC, I had to go get another one. I was upset that I found out the gender of the baby without being asked if I wanted to know. I was upset at the way I was treated by the doctors, as if it was nothing. And I was hurting and I was upset with God. And then I was upset at myself for being upset with God. And then I would see other pregnant women and I would envy them. And I would imagine, like, that's how I'm supposed to be right now. And then I get mad at myself for looking at them that way. Because I was letting my own hurt and my own feelings and my own grief just take over my mind, my feelings. And I didn't really talk about it. Like I said, I had to get back into work. I needed to make sure I was being a good employee, and just I didn't process it much. It was kind of like here and there. And if I was upset, I needed to ignore it, you know? And so I began to pray, and I prayed and I asked the Lord to bless us with another child, and that if it was His will, that it would be a boy. And 4 months after my miscarriage, I got pregnant with my son. And I was filled with so many emotions. I knew that I knew I was pregnant 2 days after I conceived. And I thought it was crazy. I thought it was my mind. I thought that I was delusional, that I wanted it so bad that, you know, I'm making these things up in my head. And a week later, I started to have very early pregnancy symptoms. And I was just like, all right, this is definitely in my head. There's no way I could be going through this so quickly, so early. But I ended up finding out that I definitely was. I was mixed with so many emotions. My husband as well. We were, especially him, we were afraid to get attached. There was a lot of fear at the beginning because we had shared the pregnancy as soon as we had found out the first time around. And so we were kind of on the fence about everything the second time around. But once we went to that 8-week appointment and everything turned out great, there was just a peace and a joy. And though I was still nervous and, you know, for that whole first trimester, as time went on, the Lord really started to give me peace, and I had no fear. I wasn't concerned. I started to feel comfort, and fear just really started to go away. And I had found out of a friend that his wife had they had just lost their first child at 10 weeks. And I thought to myself, could this be a situation that God would use so early on for me to relate to someone, especially someone I know that I grew up with? And so when I was about 7 months, that friend, he lives in Pennsylvania. He's actually one of my best friend's brothers. He came to go visit her, and I went to her house, and we saw each other, and we embraced the way we normally would. And he just looked at me and broke down crying. And I felt it. I felt his pain. I felt every emotion. In that hug, I felt every emotion that he was going through. Him and his wife and I would have been only a couple of weeks apart in our pregnancies. So I knew seeing me at 7 months pregnant just took a toll on him for that moment. And I had shared with him everything that I had went through, and he shared what they were going through together and their emotions, and we related so much. And there's nothing in that moment that I could think of other than, wow, God, like, I didn't expect this. I did not expect this at all. And I don't believe that God causes these bad things to happen to us, but I do think that these unfortunate situations, unfortunate things that do happen, that He can use them for His glory, that He can use them for us to be able to be an encouragement and to be a support system for other people, that they can lean on us and that we can also point them to Him. And so that was something that I had learned. So for me, I saw the light in my loss, but it took some time. It took some time for me to process. It took some time for me to see it. And I hope that more than anything, whether you've recently miscarried, maybe you've miscarried multiple children, maybe you've had a stillbirth, whatever situation, I just pray that you can see God in your situation and look at your situation in a different light. Sometimes the added stress, worries, and fears cause us to look at everything else rather than to look at God Himself. I don't know if you might be a Christian or not if you're watching this, but I can honestly say just from my experience that that was the only way, He was the only way that I could have made it through. And I'm grateful that He used my friend to share the wisdom that she shared with me, because I'm telling you, it was those words that softened my heart, that changed me, that started to do a work in me, that allowed me to let God work in my heart. And for me to release my pain to Him, because I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it at all. So I just want to encourage you to pray, have faith, and trust in Him. And if you're struggling, if you need encouragement, if you need prayer, then my email is always listed down in the description. You can always feel free to email me. You can check me out on Instagram, message me there. And I'm happy to pray for you. I'm happy to talk it through with you if that's what you're looking for. But I just hope that this video encourages you and helps you, because when I went through this, I really thought that this was such a rare thing to go through. And over the years, as time has gone by, I've realized it's actually not. It's more common than we think. That doesn't mean that whether you've lost a child in the early stages of pregnancy or in the your second, third trimester, or you've had a stillbirth, whatever the case is, I think that there's no watering down the situation. I feel like that's how it was for me, where it was watered down, especially since it was so early on, which is why I didn't want to talk about it, which is why I pushed it aside. But I'm hoping that this video gives you some encouragement to talk about it, some encouragement that even if you don't want to talk about it, to go to the one who's always listening. And that's our Lord God and Jesus Christ. I'm sorry if this video was a little long, but if you found it encouraging, if you want to share anything in the comments, feel free to do so. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.